Tim, you have been referring to this melting the iceberg, and it's been a little bit of a hot topic. So do you want to say a little bit about that?
Um,
A
I don't know.
hot
That's
melting
a
iceberg.
hot melting. Well, I think the first thing I'd say is anyone that's seen her work, I, I have an intuition, and this is you know, I have an intuition. Obviously, I never met her. I don't talk to her. I just don't know. I don't know how well the metaphor of an iceberg fits with a woman that was so warm. She manifested warmth, and she was so felt in the sense of touch. I think about I had this experience of grounding. One day I was going for a walk, and I picked up some ice, and I held it, and it was, uncomfortable, but I just waited until that piece of the block of ice that I held melted, and it reminded me that I was alive. There's a warmth in me that no matter what I'm experiencing, perhaps of anger or depression, that there's something warm within me. And then we're talking about attachment. We're talking about the holding space. And for me, the iceberg is a very good assessment tool for seeing and looking at what's the pattern here. So you could look at Virginia's survival coping stances: blaming, placating, super reasonable, irrelevant, and you could walk through the iceberg and say, okay, how does this look? What's the behavior? What's the feeling? What's the feelings about feelings? That's a useful exercise, and grounding in, how is this person coping? The other thing to realize about the iceberg is it's arbitrary what elements, what forms of consciousness are there. There are many things you could throw in there. For example, memories. You could throw family rules in there. There's any form of consciousness could potentially fit in there. So I think having the flexibility and the awareness that the iceberg is a useful tool, but we shouldn't restrain ourselves to a particular pattern, because if we become patternized, then our thinking sort of gets deadened by that. The other thing that I realized early on when I was first doing trainings was, what's the relationship between ingredients of an interaction and the iceberg? And they're actually pointing at the same thing, if you think about it. But I think the evolution of the iceberg would benefit from the interactive nature of it. Right now, the iceberg is, I'm thinking about a particular person's consciousness. But because Virginia's work related to systems and family systems and community systems, I think, and this is something I'm still trying to wrap my head around, about a good metaphor for that representation. But yeah, how can the metaphor also represent responses and the interactional nature? So the melting for me is a good way to signify transformation. And the way that I like to represent what happens after that transformation is water, but also from biology. If you look at what a cell is, if you look at just a single cell, a cell has a nucleus. And the nucleus you could see as like the self. It gives the instruction to the rest of the cell. And all the other forms of consciousness take guidance and leadership from that self. So that's a way of thinking about it that I found helpful, rather than thinking about everything being frozen. I want to think about all the forms of my consciousness as being amenable to my values and my yearnings and my choice-making ability. So that's how it lands for me. And that's what I offer and what I would talk about and explore. The other reason why melting is important is because I've identified, in relationship to Virginia's change process, particular universal resources that I talk about being the function and the process of transformation or melting.